Yes, there were many different sizes. That was a big question, isn't it? 8 was originally supposed to be a scale of 18 feet, 18 inches to 18 feet. This thing's supposed to be 18 inches high. And
the hair is gone off.
Oh yeah.
Aw.
Sure, that's pretty dilapidated.
Yeah.
But I found that you had to vary the scale. Frank's the only man ever picked it up on me. I varied it all the way from about 80 feet to the lowest was 18. According to what it would play against, because your eye is variable. And if you notice, I'm very careful to play human beings or windows or something that gives size opposite to them. Woods won't give size unless you plant the wood against the person face. The relative scale is all relative to the eye. And I thought one thing, I don't know, I heard somebody say they like the shot there in the woods where it has a lot of depth.
Arboretum?
What's that?
Was that shot at the Arboretum?
No, it was shot in the thing about from here about over to there. And I did it in depth of 4, when I invented the thing, which was not known as far as I know. And I didn't execute it, of course. I had some fine artists execute it, called aerial perspective, which is a face film. So far as I know, I never heard the term. I invented the term, so far as I know. And I meant by aerial perspective just depth. So the actual depth in that is a little over 4 feet, but I did it by varying. I sprayed the glasses at various distances back, and then got some I had 3 very skillful painters. One of them's still alive. He's painting very well, and I retired from this kind of work, having made a great deal of money out of pictures. And he's now living in Taos. Isn't that the place in New Mexico?
No, Mexico.
Yeah. His name's Laranaga, and he did the painting for me. I don't know if any of you all saw Cinerama. In the first picture, I bridged from country to country the paintings, and that was a real tough job of painting, because as you know, Cinerama is like this, and you have to paint so that when this was straightened out, it looked all the same. So he painted this way, so it was right to the eye, and it needed a fellow that could do this kind of work, and a skillful artist to get able to do it. I'll answer any questions about the picture you want.
I'd like to ask one. Is the picture in one, as it was originally shot? You were telling me that one scene has been taken out of it.
Yeah, the only scene and they did a pretty skillful job. Actually, I saw another little scene out, but the only scene of importance I thought was the funniest scene in the picture. Everybody, they took it out because they said it was too risque or salacious or something. All I did, all audiences from 6 years old to 60 laughed. Right up there when when I had him beat his chest against the sun.
Yeah.
And the girls back here. Then before he turns and picks her up, and he sits down. And what I had him do was pick her clothes off. That's why she's so disrobed. The next and she gets that disrobed, and then I'd have him tickle her a little. And audiences roared, little much bigger than all of them. And that ran through 52. And where I don't think it's in the negative. I tried to locate the negative of it. I don't know what
How long has
it
it been since you've seen the film?
Oh, I saw it. I did it quite recently, as a matter of fact, about 3 months ago. Against the advice of my wife, we were giving a party for some aviation people of mine. There was Jimmy Doolittle, another fellow who led the Doolittle raid over Tokyo, and Joe Doolittle, his wife, and then Johnny Allison, who was one of my best fighter pilots in China. He's a major general now in the reserve, and he's vice president of the Northrop Company here. And his wife, Penny Allison, and who was the other aviation cop we had at that?
Ted Curtis.
Oh, and Ted Curtis, who was 2 spots as chief of staff. He had the same job in Europe as I had in the Pacific during the war. He was a major general too. And he brought Fay Rafe. And we didn't, Fay's very beautiful today. She's kept her age better than any human being I ever saw. She's a beauty. Looks just like the picture. There's scarcely a wrinkle in her face, only she's black-haired instead of blonde. Her natural color. So I got up, I rigged up a thing. My son, who was a pilot in the Air Force, he was down on a day's leave. So I got a projector about like yours. And I got my film from the same joint you did. I didn't have a print of it. So I made a little speech. Everybody, we'd have dinner with all aviation people. And I got up and said, Now, I know this will bore the ladies. I know Trey is particularly interested in aviation. I'm going to discuss some pre-World War I techniques, and I have a few feet of film to illustrate. And then I signaled to my son to start it, and I opened up, not on Larry during the picture, just as Bruce, you remember at the night scene where Bruce Cabot kisses?
Oh, yeah.
Before he says, on deck, you know, on that scene. Well, it took them about 10 seconds to realize they screamed and hollered, laughed. Faye hadn't seen it since 1930 something, but 33 when it had opened. Curtis hadn't seen it in 33. Allison had never seen it. The ladies really had a good time.
How do you do the scene with the planes going around when Congress?
Well, this is the only part I played. If you the pilot, you see the scene, that's me. As the action pilot. I shot that out now in two ways. I got a fellow who's since been killed, a fellow named Clark, who was at Paul Nance, who did the flying for me, and this is sent around, you know, flying across the country. And I got him to lead that thing, and I shot it out right where Lockheed Air Terminal. You know, what do they call it now, where the Lockheed factory is? They used to call it Lockheed Air Terminal. And I shot it out there one day. And then I did a little of it in miniature, which I can tell readily with the audiences don't get, but most of that's real. Nearly all the airplane
How
stuff.
do you get the effect of holding the girl in the hand?
Yeah.
Which one?
Well, there are a lot of shots where he's got her in the hand.
I'll tell you.
She's
The
moving.
only thing that were built on scale, and I decided to build them to a 45-foot scale. Finally, I built 1 foot. You know, anyway, you see a foot. I built one arm, one hand, and the full scale. And I built one head. The close-ups doing on this are no good. When you see those close-ups where he's going down to go, that's a head, much bigger than this. And I had 3 men inside the head. One man handled eyes, one man the mouth, and so forth. Not giving signals for it.
But actually, you did have a big hand.
Oh, yes, and one of the great shots, which I'm sorry, when you take the claw, you actually see him do it, and I did it with a method I haven't disclosed as yet. But you really see the girl in the hand and see the body and King Kong and see him take the clothes off.
Aw.
And today at our house, I had a secretary, I'm sure Frank knows, named Zoe Porter for 30 years, except during the war. And so she was she was a little girl in the script department. And I'd sent for a secretary, and she was getting $18 a week or something. So I said, get up in that hand, you know. So I had to lift this girl, because Faye wasn't on there. This was when there were no unions, no guilds, no anything, you know. And so it took her out about 12 feet. And I said, look scared. She still said, I've never been so scared in my life.
Look scared.
Especially having your clothes plucked off.
No, that was just to test the lifting mechanism of the hand. Any other questions?
I don't know whether I'm looking into this a little too much, but I would say that about a quarter of that was done in miniatures. Am I right?
Oh, more than a quarter.
More than a quarter?
Yeah, this is the size.
No, but I mean all of the sets were done. Look like
No,
in-
not all of
Fluorescent
it. No, but for example, it goes in and out. I shot, remember the lake stuff?
Mhm.
I shot the borders of the lake. I built that set on the big stage over on Pathé, which was afterwards the Selznick. He was now owned by Desilu. That's the one over in Culver City. And then that's where I did the building the raft and those shots. And I did all that through the jungle. I shot on that same stage over there.
How long did it take to shoot?
I was actually photographing Frank, directing it, whatever you want to call it. It was either 11 months or 13 months. Which was it, honey? And usually 7 days a week. There were no rules then, no overtime. And I had the only bad cameraman strike in the world at that time. 50% pay cut camera. Those were rough days. That was the Depression.
Tell me how much it cost and how much it made.
I don't know how much it made, Frank, because it's the only picture I ever made that I didn't own a piece of. And this was because I was on my honeymoon, and I had a fellow died last year in the Kosciuszko Squadron. Kosciuszko, by the way, is the George Washington of Poland. But a fellow named, a great friend of mine, but he didn't know anything about the picture business, so Dorothy, and he signed my contract, which I've set, and listed the pictures. Well, it was purely by accident. Nobody meant to cheat me. But down the bottom of page 11, King, I didn't know it for 3 years, because that same year I made Flying Down to Rio and the Catherine Hepburn version of Little Women. Now, I don't know, I was getting $20,000 or $30,000 a week from all these various residuals. So I thought I was getting it from Kong. When I discovered I was, with 3 years. The company had been sold by Sonoff, the fellow that runs NBC now. They owned RKO at that time. And sold it to Floyd Odlum. I went up to Dorothy, and I knew the Odlums quite well. Where's their ranch, honey? What's the name? Up near India. When I went up and told my own part of it, and he got out the cent for the company. It wasn't on the contract. And I said, well, I'm going to sue you for it. And he said, well, I just represent the stockholders. And this is the only time I wanted to sue anybody except on our picture. Quiet Man, which we at least had, I don't know, 5 or 6 million stolen from it.
You tell that story because that is really a typical Hollywood story.
Which was?
About Ford's attitude
Oh, my attitude was the same when King Kong, being in courts for 5 or 6 years. When the Quiet Man, I was really furious because of my own carelessness. When the Quiet Man, I don't know how many millions. I think it stole at least 6 million. But we owned, the studio owned half, and Jack Ford and I owned half. Each of us owned a quarter, and he owned a quarter. So we knew where they stolen. So I wanted to sue for it.
$6 million you want to sue for.
I believe 5 or 6, I've forgotten. And Jack said, I'm not going to spend the next 10 years of my life in courts. We'll go to the Supreme Court 4 or 5 years ago. So we settled it for $500,000. But you know, we had the biggest hit of the year. I had the 2 biggest hits of the year. The other one I made more money off of.
Have you any idea how much King Kong has approximately?
Yes, about $11 million.
What did it cost to make?
It cost about $425, because things were very cheap then. 425.
General Cooper, you told me just before we ran the picture that King Kong grossed more on its second run.
Yes, it did. And you see, with the first run, the most all of you all too young to have even been born, I guess, during the Depression. King Kong opened the day the banks, every bank in America closed in New York, and still ran to capacity. It opened the present music hall. This was its first picture.
The Radio City Music Hall.
And I held the record up until World War II. And I held the record, even though it opened when the banks closed, I held the record after World War II, quite a while afterwards, in Tokyo. I beat my own record, but this is Cinerama. I had the record for this picture. But there was no money during the Depression. I mean, a ticket you could get in for a quarter, you know, and now the thing pay $3 for a seat, $1.50, $1, whatever it's called, what kind of theater it is. So I hope we don't have those rough times again. Because we haven't never been in the Depression. It's a rough thing. I've lived a very rough life in my younger days. The first picture I made was a trek in Persia. The second I made in the jungles of Northern Siam. Yeah, and Chang was the second. And Four Fellows, which was actually the first picture anybody ever thought of shooting something in Africa and then shooting something in Hollywood. Imagine, I'd never seen Hollywood. First 2 pictures I made entirely on my own. I made them both with Shotzak. He was the cameraman, I was the director, was the setter.
But how did you happen to get interested in this?
I wanted to be a geographer, and I studied the migrations of tribes at the American Geographical Society, 155th Street and Broadway. I worked there 8 hours a night while I worked at his alma mater, the New York Times. I worked at Times in the night and another place in the day. And So a fellow named Isaiah Bowman, who afterwards became head of Johns Hopkins, was the director of the American Geographic, and he taught me how to make maps, and I wanted to be an explorer, and I didn't know there wasn't any doing. I borrowed $10,000, and I pledged I could make about 100 a week with feature stories and everything else, and I figured it would take me 20 years to pay it back, and so I paid for 50,000 feet of film, 2 cameras, and all my expenses for 14 months, almost. We had to win all the newsreel prizes. We made about $2,000. We won every one. We didn't miss a one. All the still photographers didn't miss a one of those. And I sold 6 stories to National Geographic, 6 to a magazine now defunct called Asia by cable because they trusted me. And that paid for us getting as far as Paris with our film. And Schoedsack and I went out to Janvier, I guess it is, in the working quarters of Paris. And got a couple of, what do you call the little girls in Paris, those cute little working girls?
Midnets?
What?
Midnets.
Yeah, I got a couple of midnets, and they're done with these great big old drums you used to develop. We'd never developed any film, but we didn't have enough money to hire the pros. So we took our year's work and developed it ourselves. We didn't lose a foot of film either.
Oh, good.
And then came back and I was going to lecture with it. Schoedsack went down with a fellow named Will Beebe to the Galapagos Islands as his photographer, and I started lecturing at colleges with it. I was the big geographer. And Jesse Lasky saw it and said, I'd like to put it in the theater. And he paid us so much money, I didn't know there was that much money in the world. And then he said, can you make another one? I said, yeah, sure. And she said, what? And I said, that was made because there wasn't enough vegetation. I said, I'll go to a jungle and make it because what happens to people when there is too much vegetation. And that picture is a real funny story about that one. I know nothing about business to this day. I'm really the stupidest businessman ever lived. So Schoedsack even knew less than I. He's living in Santa Monica right now. And he knows less about business than I. So we came back and they added about 800 feet to grass, and I thought it hurt the picture terribly, so they could get length, so it'd make a big picture. So we cut Chang, and then we blend up all the film, all the rest of the negative. Every foot of it. I didn't know anything about stock shots. I was sure nobody was going to. So we ran it for Jesse Lasky in New York, the Paramount, up in his private projection room. And so he was enthusiastic. So that was when they used to get all salesmen from all over the country. About 2 weeks later, they came in, so they ran it for them. They stood up. This was the old Criterion Theater, you remember it? Mr. Nugent was motion picture critic, criticizing many of my films. It was not quite that early, though. He was still in prep school or something. And so they said, we were coming out the door. So our deal was, last year was very kind. He gave us $12,000 and 40% of the picture, 20% each. And so I thought it was $12,000 for both of us. I never made $6,000. I ever hoped to in my life. I mean, and I found out it was $12,000 each. Lasky had to correct me on that first hour. So everybody, I had a friend who flew with me who was now a lawyer, and he says, now these gentlemen running these motion, they know far more about anything they offer you 40% refuse it. I said, okay, I will. So Mr. Zucker, who is still alive, still chairman of the board of Paramount, he was standing by the door talking to Mr. Lasky, all and out, and Schoedsack and I have been modestly keeping in the back. So Schoedsack's 6'6", so we, the little man, the big man, was falling out. And I heard Mr. Zucker say to Mr. Lasky, and do the boys own any of this? And Lasky sheepishly said 40%. So the next day they sent for me, Mr. Zucker did. He said, you know, distributing these pictures, it has lots of expenses. And we don't want to see the boy hurt, and I'm going to give you $25,000 for your share. And I said, I don't want to hurt Paramount. And I know you're paying, and maybe it'll never make it. So this went on for about a week. He finally got up to $100,000 each, and I still refused. We made a lot more than that. Oh, well, that's a lot of fun.
Chimeo de Naos and Dona Florenti.
Yeah, well, I was told not to accept anything. The Schoedsack was going to kill me when I turned down $50,000 each. You know, this was a lot of money for two fellas that never had a dime. Well, it was a lot of fun. This picture was a lot of fun to make.
It was damn good, you know?
Oh,
What still amazes me is that it was about 5 reels before you saw a
Yeah.
car.
This is the only fight Celtics, a much brighter man than I, but that's the only quarrel I had with him. Wallace was dead, so I had to write the original story. And Creelman couldn't write it, he was
Was
rowdy.
that Hank Freeman's brother?
Yeah, that's how they got tea. So I wrote the damn thing, and I said to build up to it before you saw it. And Selznick said, I don't know this kind of picture, but all I know is that you're open, right on the excitement, open on Kong. And I said, I made 3 of these things, nothing with Kongs in them. I said, you got 3 Ds, dis to believe, to make you believe. Distance, danger, difficulty. So I tried to make it seem far away that it was dangerous to get to and difficult. By the time you get there, then maybe you believe an 18-inch eight.
You realize
is
the
a big
TV
thing.
producer Scoop now would say to you, you've got to put that glue to the seat of the audience's pants.
And they're right. Now look, I'm making a TV show, and you and I just had this argument. and they're right. Look, you got people in the theater, and I was always prepared to bore people for 15 minutes if I could establish my characters. If you notice in this thing, I got my love story going. The boy fell in love with the girl. You understood who Denham was. You understood the character of the captain. I got them on. So once you got that chase going, I never had to stop to explain a single damn thing, you know, because you understood it.
But in
Now, I spent not 15 minutes, I spent nearly 40 minutes explaining this. And this is why it's so bad on television. They cut most of that. You jump right into danger and you don't believe the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably, at television, probably open with this big monkey.
But you can do
pushing
it.
out the gates.
I made a picture that I don't even remember its name, about stuntman once. So I wanted to get because this is a little picture they won't stay to see. Or wouldn't then, maybe I don't know what they do now. And this picture cost, I don't know, $80,000 or something at that time. Maybe not that much, $65,000. So I wanted to do them. So I opened up in a bank, and there's a real stereo stick-up going on. And what people, and all of a sudden it really gets wild. A fellow gets shot, and a fellow swings off a shaft, and then it gets a little wild. And boy, people are getting killed on every side. And as this fellow hits the chandelier and hits the floor, I pulled back. I was trying to back the thing, and here was the fellow supposed to be the wreck, and he says, cut, and all the extras get off and the rest of that. So it was a picture inside of a picture, and this glued them. They knew it was a story about stuntmen right that second. Another thing we do, that we got to state our problem. Sure as hell, the boys are right, you know. Because the difference in a theater, you paid your buck, you'll stay 15 minutes. TV,
You turn it off.
first 30 seconds don't interest you, bing. I'm that way myself. So this is my first TV venture, we got it ready.
Can you tell us anything about it?
Sure, it's a Western, only it's a new form.
I bet it is, knowing you.
Yeah, it is. I think it's going to revolutionize the television business.
Why?
You'll get an Academy Award next year.
What?
You'll get an Academy Award.
They want to give Emmys, don't they?
Emmy.
Well, if we do
It's
it,
Academy
if I can
Award.
cast it, I haven't got the foggiest idea how to cast one part in this. The bow, I don't know how to cast it. I need a Douglas Fairbanks Senior at age 21 or 23, or an Errol Flynn at age 23. I don't know anybody like that. I've looked at 40
How about
boys.
casting me?
What? Oh, boy, yeah, that's right.
Maybe you could do it by miniature again.
There you go.
Still done. I was down in a little restaurant here the other day. My wife and I like to go to Coffee Dan's right down near the beach here, where you got the best hamburger in the world. And we had dinner right across from it, a very swank place, Bob Burns. Right there. We go in there, and every waitress there knows us. That's our favorite lunch place. For, 6 minutes from home, 5 minutes from home? And we go down, and so they got off 2 good lines on me, the waitress, the other day, because I wear this funny cap to it over, and I'm always having fun. And so they decided to give me a new title. Teenage senior citizen. And then the other one said, why do you wear, what was it, why do you wear that dyed gray wig? Oh, why do you dye that wig gray? Oh, well, that's it. Now, I hope it didn't bore you all. Didn't bore me. I enjoyed it.
General, before you go, would you mind just telling one more story?
Yeah, what about?
The story of how you sold King Kong to RKO to make it. Jack Fogarty clued me in on a story which I didn't know about taking the last line, the carton.
Well, actually, it was a sort of a combination of that. I sell all of them usually the same way. No, I get everything visual. And I got, first I wrote, long before I ever came to Hollywood, I wrote the story. I wrote the, what you call a treatment. I guess you were about 20 pages, 15 pages. And it had the same basic story you have here. And didn't have all that dialogue. Ruth Rose, who never written a line in a, they wrote most of the dialogue together with me. I wrote a little of it, but she wrote most of it. I wrote the things like, you'll see it in lights and Broadway.
Yeah.
Had a lot of that stuff. Some of it I wrote right on the set. You know, I had to make up things. I had four. I've gone now. Are we giving 2 of those to the museum?
Yeah, I think so.
I had about 6 big, beautiful black and white sketches done of King Kong as I saw him, and the girl as I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly as you, same scenes in the picture. They ain't changed, Eddie. And I took those and I had one line. I said I had the last line in the picture. It wasn't the airplanes killed, it was beauty killed the beast. That's all the picture. I had that line. And I invented the old Arabian proverb.
That was
They asked me where I got the idea, and I said the old Arabian proverb.
Living on the sand someplace in
And
the
the
desert.
one thing we were just writing now, and Frank hadn't, I don't know, I was working with a group before Mr. Nugent came in and really knocked this line for me. But I wrote an old Polish proverb, 16th century Polish proverb. And I wrote that one in verse. It's sort of funny. This one I sort of, you know, this, like you translate from the Arabic. This is why Arabia Deserta, that Doherty wrote, and why Lawrence's book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom, did any of you ever read it? That's why it reads that flow. It's why, because both those fellows could think in Arabic and then deliberately translated from the Arabic to English, gives it a kind of a style. And this is why a lot of people can't read Conrad, because Conrad was a Pole, thought in Polish, and didn't speak English in his whole life very well. So Lord Jim and Nigger the Narcissus and what are those, some of his other great books? Typhoon. All of them got that peculiar back thing. Well, it's the way you, it's like almost a direct translation of Polish. I don't speak very, I only learned a little Polish I did with a couple of years I was there. I'm an Anglo-Saxon.
Conrad was when I was in a hospital, plenty of time. I enjoyed it, but otherwise he bores the hell out.
Well, it's because of that peculiar thing. I like Lord Jim. I hope it's a good story.
Could I ask you another question?
Yes.
How did the native, the only surviving native on the boat, do you remember, that escaped from the island, they were blown out from the island into the sea and picked up by a Danish captain and taken to Hong Kong?
I never explained it.
How did he explain to the captain where the island was? What
I
language
bet.
did he speak?
Look, they're filled with things. How can a
never
thing
thought
be
of that.
sillier than this? I had the damnedest argument with some of my people that were working with me. So, all right, you've socked him with a gas bomb.
Yeah.
Now he's going to
How do you
appear on
get
the
him
show
to-
in New
yeah,
York.
how do you get
They
him on the
wanted me
show?
to spend, there was radio then, there
But it
wasn't
didn't kill him,
television.
did it? It just
No, but they
stopped.
wanted me, you think if you took an animal that size in the New York harbor, the papers would be headlined. So I said, to hell with it. I won't give a chance. I said, you'll see it in the lights in Broadway. King Kong, the 8th wonder of the world. I had Bob say it.
Yeah.
And then bang, right into it, and then I come down on what I hope was a funny line, you know, kidding about the tickets. And then I ran right in the theater and had a fella stumble over a gal.
I'd say there are lots of
I
girls.
don't even know
Well, it's the
who.
same thing, a question I asked John Ford one time.
Don't
I said, you see all these Indian chases and they're chasing a stagecoach, you know, And they're firing at the guys in the seat, and the guys in the seat are firing back at them. I said, why doesn't some of the Indian just kill the front horse? The whole damn thing. He says, because that would end the picture right there.
Well, this picture's full of those kind of holes. That's why, at the beginning of it, I don't have too many holes when it's moving so slow. But once I get in it, nobody's gonna stop and ask me, because they're gonna say, what's happened next?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
The audience asks questions after the picture is over, not during it. You know?
Yeah. And the one thing that you may not know, Maxie Steiner, who wrote the music for this, wrote the music for Little Women. He's won, what, 5 Academy Awards, 24 nominations. He still says this is his best musical score. You ought to hear this thing play away from a picture. This is a very fine score, but you get it so, it has a good love theme for the boy-girl. It has a great theme for the ape. It has a theme, there are about 8 themes going in
The
this.
King Kong love song.
Put it out as a rock.
You
Well,
say-
you have a close to King Kong love song, the last scene.
Yeah.
That's a good piece of music, that last scene.
By the way, there is a recording of it out,
It's the only one
Short,
I've heard
yeah.
is a very bad one.
with Jack Shanlon.
I think that's the same one. Apparently was, as you know, in all recording, it's how good an orchestra, not only the music, it's how good the players are and who's directing it. A musical director is just as important as a boy directing a picture, maybe more so. I mean, who was the great one of all? Toscanini? He could take any orchestra and make them great. Any bunch of musicians. He was that good. Well, I thank you and.
Thank you.